Well, hello, and welcome to Opal City Confidential, a Starman podcast, episode 22. You guys will be, when you listen to this conversation will be 2 months old. But me and David had time to get together, so we're gonna cover. Oh, David, say hello. David Steele from Earth 2 Podcast is with me again.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Ross. Thank you for having me back. It's great to be here. Hope everyone's well.
Yes. I like having. We've already recorded next week's episode, also, or last week's episode. We recorded.
Yeah.
Okay. We're so far. I'm jumping ahead, but I think I'm going to wrangle Dave and hopefully Pete at some time to doing these All-Star comics, so I'm not the only one having to read 64 pages.
Yeah, we worked out that last week's episode was recorded 2 months before this episode.
Yeah, maybe I'll edit this week. I don't know. I'm lazy. But we're going to be covering All-Star Comics 8, the first appearance of Starman as a member of the Justice Society of America, as well as Doctor Mid-Nite. So this is cool. So I'm reading from Mike's Amazing World, All-Star Comics 8. It was cover dated January 1941, and on sale October 25th, 1941. We're still pre-Pearl Harbor. Wow.
Wow, that's only 3 days before my dad's first birthday.
That would be 3 days about my negative 17th birthday. No, not that much. A little less. The story is called Two Members Win Their Spurs. It sounds like a 70s porno. All right, let's get...
That's going to be Boss's new podcast. Coming soon, if you pardon the expression. Right.
Oh. I'll shave my beard and wear my 70s mustache. I went as a brigadier to a cosplay to a con, and my wife went, "You look like a porn star." It's like, it's awful. It's awful. Well, this story, I'm going to give the credits. It's Gardner Fox. Artists are Everett Hibbard, Stan Ashmeyer. It'd be Ashmeyer.
Yeah.
Ben Finton, Cliff Young, Jack Burnley, yay. Sheldon Maldorf, yay. Bernard Bailey, yay. This has been reprinted twice, and it's been reprinted. This comic has only been reprinted twice. One in Archives Volume 2, which I have, and in the Millennium Edition from 2001, which David read his in.
Yes, I'm holding my copy of that up for the benefit of our YouTube.
Is that from 81 or 2000? It's a 2001.
Yeah, February, dated inside February 2001.
Yeah.
Must be the end of them then.
And the roll call is Hawkman, Adam, Sandman, Spectre, Dr. Fate, Johnny Thunder, Starman, yay, why we're here, and Doctor Mid-Nite.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm just going to read Mike's brief synopsis for good reason. The JSA members arrive for their latest meeting to learn that each has had difficulty on their last case because key witnesses have suddenly gone insane and are afraid of light. Non-member Dr. Mid-Nite arrives and explains he had a similar experience and has developed an antidote to the insanity virus. The virus was created by Professor Elba and distributed to crooks, as you would. The JSA members return to their individual cases using Dr. Mid-Nite's antidote to restore the sanity of the afflicted men. After closing each of their own cases, the JSA members turn their attention to finding the creator of the virus, Dr. Elba. Johnny Thunder is captured after his adventure and brought to Elba's laboratory. Johnny stubbornly does not want to summon his Thunderbolt for help, believing he can solve the case by himself. Johnny, you're an idiot. Accidentally, Johnny says the magic word. Again, you're an idiot. Anyway, and the T-Bolt arrives, brings the JSA to his rescue. Dr. Mid-Nite is brought to the lab and and follows Elba into a darkness room. Elba mistakenly injects himself with the virus and insanely leaps to his death. Dr. Mid-Nite is then welcomed into the JSA, joining Starman as a new member. All right, if you are a Johnny Thunder fan, and I've kicked my disdain for his IQ, I apologize, but I think he may be dumber than Snapper Carr.
No question. Yeah. I always like the scenes where he tricks himself into saying the magic words. The Thunderbolt always draws it out of him. There's a great panel towards the end of the whole comic when the Thunderbolt's Hawkman and Spectre and Starman and Atom and Sandman and Dr. Fate riding along on his back, which is worth the price of the comic alone, I would say.
Oh, yeah, that was one of my favorite panels.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, Johnny's great. We've talked about him a couple of times in the other two podcasts. I like him a lot, but you're right. I think he's a bit of a cretin, isn't he?
Yeah, and you know what I think? When I go back, and we're going to talk about difference between, because you have to when you're covering books like this, especially when the books were formatted like this. And I want to talk about that. But Johnny is there for laughs. He's to lighten the mood. It's because they're wanting to give their readers a variety of stories because they break up and they do it, and they have different. They have one writer, but they have different artists. And the artists come from the regular series for the most part. Yeah. And Johnny is a comedic character, and it's just a good way of, if you're going to have, 64 pages. Imagine if every comic was 64 pages nowadays.
They wouldn't get them published, fella, would they?
Well, no, because these guys, we're going to talk about the art too, and I think some of that's because you're getting paid like $1 a page. You're going to hack the stuff out.
Can you imagine if Jeff Johns was writing the Golden Age Justice, you'd get one 64-page comic every 6 months if you were lucky.
I know, and normally that's the penciler is normally the slow poke, but I think with John sometimes it's him.
Yeah.
Because they've been smart with Justice Society and have different artists doing different eras.
Yes.
And one, because that in the latest issue to see an Ordway unknown soldier hand a mission briefing packet to Sergeant Rock.
Fantastic.
I may have swooned a bit.
Yes.
That hit all the nerds hits on that one. But let's talk about one overall. This is we're in the middle of a transition with the Justice Society because we lost the issue before this. The Flash is left and not been replaced, and Green Lantern is leader.
Yeah.
For one issue, and then at the end you get what's the splash page of this at the end of the issue before, which you can't see, but the thing that is the inner page is also the final page of the issue before as an ad saying this is what you'll see next week, that Starman and Doctor Mid-Nite are joining, and Green Lantern is now he's an honorary member.
And that obviously happened because Green Lantern got his own comic, and that was sort of the rule. That's why Supes and Bats couldn't be members because they had their own books, and Jay left because all Flash had started. So the individual Green Lantern title, and obviously Our Man, I guess, just wasn't popular, which why he was phased out. But of course, I talked enough about Our Man last time. I wouldn't.
Yeah, start. No, I think did his series end?
Well, I think I would have to check the dates because we did I don't have all my notes on me. We did an Our Man story.
God, that was so good. I love that episode because it was good at Our Man.
Yeah, when we did the Wanted, we talked about the Wanted series.
That almost triggered me to buy the hardcover.
Good. out of all of them, I think Rex was one that kind of hung about for the shortest period of time. And of course, there's some really good stuff in All Star Squadron that kind of explains why and all this sort of stuff. But it's he was phased out, and obviously Starman came in his place, and then obviously Chuck does very well, so they invite him in, and this one is also it's interesting. Like you get used to sort of teams changing up the roster, and it's even I suppose this is the first time it sort of happens. You're used to people coming and going in Justice League or the Avengers or whatever. Some teams, obviously Fantastic Four or the early X-Men, stay the same for a long time. But it's interesting that quite early on the JSA were kind of mixing it up, and it stays fairly stable for quite a while.
Oh, and Mid-Nite never goes away.
Yeah.
He's in every issue from here on.
Yeah, I think Mid-Nite and Hawkman are the only two guys that
no, Atom.
The Atom as well, they last the difference, and of course Alan and Jay come back, and Diana and Canary turn up as well, and obviously Wildcat and Mr. T pop in occasionally. But yeah, it's it's a point. Yeah, Chuck comes out and stays. Ted stays for a long time as well. He's
here until 35.
Yeah, he's around for a good long time.
So I was thinking I was only going to have like one or like a handful because, but then I forget that. Let's go to the format because, folks, the way this is set up is, and this one is unique compared to the other ones. Normally it starts with them all coming together and saying, "Hey, there's a case," and then dispersing. But this time there's a prologue, which is the Doctor Mid-Nite adventure.
Yes.
Then he goes and tells them about his adventure, and they go off on their cases, and then come back together to wrap it up in a bow.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of, I thought that was cool. So we have not read thoroughly every bit of this because it's a Starman podcast, but I want to talk about some of the art, and while we do it, while we talk about Mid-Nite. Yeah. Because there's some, like, and hold on, I have it here. Who did the Doctor Mid-Nite art? I think it's Sam Ashmeyer. Is it? No, it's Hibbard.
Okay.
It's Hibbard, and I think that's his artist. Okay.
Right.
No, Doc Mid-Nite chapter. Well, wait a minute. He's got two chapters. I'm reading this wrong. Hold on. Yeah, he is. He's chapter 1 is him, and it's Hibbard. I just find reading Golden Age comics, you got to read it with a different set of tools in your head.
Yeah.
Because it is very simplistic. It's very repetition, and you'll think the art looks. I don't want to say the art's bad. I think at times that these guys are doing it for $1 a page.
Sure.
And they're pumping it out. So I just think it's kind of like, I'm not sure what Dr. Mid-Nite's mask should look like, because it, like, his nose disappears when he's...
Yeah, and it's weird, like, looking at page 3 of the Doctor Mid-Nite story, and there's 5 panels that follow on from each other that are almost identical. Like, you know, Doctor Mid-Nite is right in the centre, and he's doing something, You know, it's from a narrative point of view, it's not very exciting. It's quite, you know, I mean, some of the later pages are much better, but it's, you know, here's Doctor Mid-Nite, here's Doctor Mid-Nite, here's Doctor Mid-Nite, here's Doctor Mid-Nite, here's something else. Oh, here's Doctor Mid-Nite again. It's a bit repetitive and a bit not very interesting to look at. I mean, the thing that strikes me, you get so used to these characters and how you see them. Just a slight difference in his costume. Like, there's only one crescent moon.
Yeah.
His chest, and you're kind of used to the version we've all got used to from All-Star Squadron and the Silvery. So he's got 3 or 4 buttoning up his tunic. It's obviously quite early stages for him at this point. He does kick ass, I suppose, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. You know what? And it's
gets to fight an ape.
They found the gorilla thing 20 years earlier than the next fad of it. Well, no, see, most of my Doctor Mid-Nite is from the team-ups, right? Sure. And he was in a lot of the early, when they brought All-Star back in. God, man, everybody used him.
Yeah.
I'm not. Jeez. Yeah. He's really prominent in Levitz's All-Star for the first part. Conway and Levitz. He is prominent in All-Star Squadron for a long years.
Yeah, he's in it an awful lot at the start.
And he's in Starman. He's probably the most important JSA member in Starman, next to anybody else.
And like Rex, he gets, you know, thrown aside in issue 3 or issue 3 of Zero Hour. It's weird. It just makes you think, like, I think we've talked about Zero Hour before, what a bastard it was, but you just sort of think, like, they had no idea of the history of the characters they were dealing with. They'd no, you know, the way they write them out, just no respect. But no, Chuck's I mean, it's a brilliant idea. A blind doctor who can see in the dark.
I love it. I love it.
It's so cool. I mean, they used him he was in the Parabec series, wasn't he?
God, talk about that's a masterpiece. I mean, that's a book, like, put that out in a trade. I don't care who's pissed at who. Mike Carlin, you retired.
Yes.
Maybe someone will have, you know, because that needs to be in a nice hardcover deluxe edition that I can fawn over and read. I do have those issues. I'm getting rid of floppies, but you have to pry those out of my dead hand because I don't, you know.
Yeah.
But no, he's really prominent, and he is. Let's ask while we're talking, Dr. Mid-Nite. I'm going to ask you, what did you think of Beth Chapel? What did you think of Peter Was it Peter Cross?
Peter Cross. I liked Peter because our Peter, Mr. Watson, my colleague on the Earth 2 podcast. He's one of the things we disagree on is I'm not a fan of Infinity Inc. I don't like that series very much. I'm not looking forward to when we have to do it in the Earth 2 podcast. We'll get to it in a few years, obviously. It's a good long way away.
The Ordway stuff's okay.
I remember reading the Eclipso stories when Beth and Yolanda were killed off and feeling a bit of a pang. But I love Peter Cross because he was basically, it was just a return to basics. They may as well just have brought Chuck back. To be honest, I don't think they were that different.
No, I think Peter starts out a little more vicious.
Mm.
You know, he's a little more, not vicious, but when dealing with bad guys, I think Peter Cross was just a little colder.
Yeah, he has that sort of clinical detachment.
That's okay. That's exactly it.
You know, which a good medical person should have, I think.
Yeah, like I'm surgically removing bad guys.
I remember when he turned up in the 1999 JSA series, and he's not in it straight away, but he turns up around about 4 or 5 issues in, and there's a bit of Black Canaries on her own. She's been injured, and he turns up and he's, you know, sets whatever broken rib or wrist that she's got. And I remember Dinah sort of thinking, who is this guy? He's more confident than God. So, and my mum was a nurse for a long time, and you know, she's told me in the past about how it's not an arrogance thing or an ego thing, but she told me about some surgeons that she encountered over the years who were just so above everyone else because they were so focused and so precise about what they had to do. They were so disciplined about it. And
no, I work in healthcare, and that's a really good thing. I had a cancer scare about 15 years ago, and they had to take out part of my pancreas. Right. And I had that because I worked at the hospital, and I was the one serving all the docs coffee. And this doc, my doc, she goes, I got you the head of the surgical oncology. His name Dr. Kaplan. And I always liked Dr. Kaplan because, one, when I was eventually an operator at the hospital, he could be really short and nasty, but when he was my doctor, he came in and sat down in a chair and talked to me for 5 minutes every day when I was in the hospital for 5 days. Yeah. You know, and that's a lot for a surgeon who is the head of teaching surgery, you know, but people, when he's mean, I said, no, he's just smarter than us. And he's working on a different level because when I would see him with his daughters, like when on weekends he would go by the coffee shop with his kids, and he was a doting father and full of emotion and warmth. But as a doctor, you know, when he talked to me, diagnosing me, hey, how about the Mets this year? Let's talk baseball, because he knew I was a baseball fan. And then he turned to the nurse and he'd be like, bump, 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 and it was a different persona, and then he would be back. Yeah. And it's just because, you know, I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, my mum was a nurse for a good long time, well over 40, you know, nearly 50 years. And people who didn't know her very well would say, you know, I have to be careful what I say because I'm at my mother's house just now as we're recording. I don't want to walk back. I'm having to plug my phone in at the same time because the battery's dying. You know, people who didn't know her find her very, they've used the word cold, but that's just her work persona.
Well, you got to detach yourself.
Exactly.
You know, it's life and death, really, for them. It can be awful.
Can you, if you can't detach yourself from the fact that you have to do, like, say, heavy invasive surgery on someone, you know, if you get too freaked out about it, you're useless. You have to have that Olympian detachment, I think. I mean, there is talk about. I said, you know, before we started recording, listeners, I said we were not going to go on too many times. Yes. But we're doing it already.
All right. Well, let's move. Okay, so let me ask you something. Let's get to the thing about Golden Age comics and get to talk about that elephant in the room. I love all these characters. I own all the archives because I love these characters.
Yes.
I love the early one. You know, I've had to read some of the JLA, JSA team-ups, like in the issues in the 70s and 80s, before you get to Len Wein, are pretty rough.
Yeah, the quality is variable. I would agree with that.
It is all over the place, and I had forgotten all over the place. But I love, I kind of like the Silver Age. I'm a huge fan of what they tried to do a couple times, like the Paperback series, or All-Star Squadron, the Jeff Johns run.
Sure.
They're great characters, but I find reading Golden Age comics difficult. And I've said it because I have less problem reading Starman because it's better.
Well, I think the big difference in this issue of All-Star 8 is a really good example of it. The artwork in Starman is just light years better. There's no other word for it than so much of the other stuff. It's not, you don't have to adjust your sensibilities as much when you're reading the Ted stories as you do, say, the Atom story or even the Sandman story in this one. I think Bailey's still there on the Spectre, and Bailey's a master of layouts. I mean, some of his figures are quite rudimentary, but the layouts are amazing. His expressions are good.
His alien universes are as good as Ditko's.
Yeah, it's not a struggle, but but if you compare the artwork, especially I think if you compare the Atom to Starman, it's night and day. It really is. It's you'd think that they were decades apart, to be honest. And
that's Bill Fitton.
Yeah. And I don't mind it. I mean, you can read it; it's fine, it's enjoyable.
But you really have to put on your time machine goggles, which you should with art. I mean, I don't like people who go, but my art standards, that's this. It's like, yeah, but you're putting an issue you have on a comic written by a person who wouldn't have ever thought about it.
Exactly, and that applies to a lot of things. Like, we're both Doctor Who fans. We all know the reappraisal that Talons of Weng Chiang has had in recent years.
I still think it's a masterpiece.
I think it's one of the best Doctor Who stories ever. But it has some unfortunate sort of make-up decisions, which don't stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And I think
that's the most racist thing in there. I think some of the dialogue that Tom Baker has given is like, really.
Well, I'm not going to defend it entirely, but it's tongue in cheek. It's not meant to be taken seriously, and it's done with a wink that the audience should know that it's not being done seriously. But we're going off on a tangent again.
Yeah, but you have to look at art. I'm big on this. You have to look at art from when it's written, why it was written, who wrote it, and when. That doesn't mean you have to like it or dislike it. I think the general plot of this is pretty good. I was like, oh, cool. I know Dr. Elba because, he comes back up in issue 20. I forgot that in the Brainwave segment. And he's name dropped in All-Star Squadron.
Yeah.
Is he one of the scientists in the annual where they all get Krakow gives them all the sense in life? He may be. I don't know.
Remember, it's a long, long time since I read the. I say it a long time. It's not. As the crow flies, it's not really a long time. It's about 8 years since I last read All-Star Squadron, which doesn't feel when you get to our age, it's no time at all.
No, yeah.
But I can't remember the specifics. That's one of my least favourite Roy Thomas retcons, honestly.
It's
just Roy
it's an issue and it's a reason and it's a plot device in need of a story. I need to explain something. So I'm going to spend 24 pages. But but it has George Perez inked by Jerry Ordway for the first time.
That's true.
Drawing Our Man.
And I think there's Martin O'Dell pages as well, isn't there?
Yeah. It's one of those It's one of those 80s when DC would do a special comic and have multiple artists. There's a Legion 300 is like that, and that's a joy.
Sure.
But you have to you kind of have a different mindset. I think going through it, Doc Fate's art's a little rough at times.
Yeah. It rattles along, but it's quite simplistic. There's not a lot of detail in a lot of the panels. Not a lot of background detail. If you look at, I don't know what page number it is, but there's quite a lot of empty blank spaces or shady backgrounds behind them. Whereas the Starman one is just lush.
Yeah, it is, and I'm going past the Atom stuff, and it is so basic.
Yeah.
But I found that with any old Golden Age Atom comic I've ever read. So, but I do want to touch. I liked Sandman a bit. I didn't mind Cliff Young art. It reminded me very much of Frank Robbins. There were just some images that reminded me of like Frank Robbins' Invaders and stuff.
Okay.
Especially the first, the panel where he's coming down in the trees.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Sandman stuff. I mean, there's a slightly heightened element to it. Wesley's hat being huge. Is, we've just done a really early Sandman story for the Earth 2 podcast, which by the time this is released will probably have been out. And we talked a lot about the sort of minimalist, almost sort of really film noir aspects of the really early stories, and this is much looser.
And this is... Does he get to the... Okay, he still hasn't gone into the Kirby costume yet. Okay.
No, that's still a little while. Right. It happens soon, though.
It does. It's not in this volume of the archives.
Yeah.
But
well,
we both agreed that the Maldorf... You liked the Maldorf Hawkman, though, didn't you?
Yeah, it's very moody, isn't it? Look at the first page, the way the shading of that guy with the moustache that's talking to him. What's his name? Watkins. Yeah, it's Shelley, so you can't say anything bad about Shelley at all. And some of the arms look a bit rudimentary, but it's a lot more pleasing overall. It's a lot richer. It's a richer experience than, say, the Atom or the Chuck story.
It does have another Perkidas Sierra in it.
Yep.
So, but we're going to talk Starman. Let's get to Starman. One, it's Jack Burnley. This looks like John Buscema could have drawn this, or Dick Ayers in the 1960s.
It's the word I would use is just quality. It's just that. Look at the detail in that house as he flies down towards it in the first panel, with a full moon looming in the background. So take a drink, listeners. It's gorgeous. It's just Ted looks so athletic and strong and handsome,
and biologically proportionate and anatomically correct.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, that little details like the yellow fins on the yellow ear muffs on his helmet, obviously, and his fin being coloured in yellow as opposed to just being red. That's interesting. That's a little.
And I like the
variant.
The flat, how the cape goes down to the point of the star, because they stopped doing that with him.
Yeah.
In modern times, they keep him kind of like a Adam West, where the cape goes over their collarbone.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that because he's unique.
Yeah. I mean, it's you can't really heap enough praise in Byrne. I mean, the bits when the second panel when Billy comes to meet Ted at the door, and just the detail and the woodwork of the house, everything is just richer. It's much more carefully rendered. There's a lot more depth to it. It looks a lot less disposable, and it looks a lot less hurried.
Yeah, it does.
Any of the Atom pages, 10 pages before this or whatever.
Some of the detail, he's taking so much time that he draws Billy in a slightly more cartoonish way in the face to make him softer and more easier for the little kid reading it to focus in on. That's me. Yeah. That's who I am in this story.
Yeah. And I suppose it heightens his sort of vulnerability in a way as well, I think. But that's a good point, because there's not many are there any other stories in this issue with kids as the sort of audience identification?
No, they're not.
Billy, I mean, of course, Billy gets a page and a half to himself.
See, again, that's what I like about some of this, and I think some of these, they all have a very basic plot, and it's the same plot, but I think this one is a little richer because of
the flashback.
just the amount of stuff that goes on, and like Billy finds all the money. And then he almost gets run over by accident by Ted and Doris, and it's got this. So there's this big action sequence, and it all looks really realistic. You know how he swerves a car. We see it. It's very cinematic, and how Ted just reaches out with his arm and picks the kid up as he's driving full speed. Yeah. And I love Billy. Wow, you sure are strong.
Yes. Then Ted has to remember a couple of panels later that to have a headache.
He's such a delicate flower.
Yeah. Ted looks so handsome, doesn't he? He just looks. He looks almost like I'm trying to think. He looks like in panels 4 and 5 of the third story page. He looks like a proper movie star.
Yeah, he does. A Tyrone Power
Yeah, and it's hilarious that Starman. Ted says goodbye to Billy, and then Starman comes in to see him 2 minutes later without, with no mask.
How do you not know it's him?
Yeah, Billy's a smart kid. He's surely gonna go. Hang on, he looks like the nice man who I just met.
Yeah, well, it's like Doris is marrying Ted's poet, and she can't tell.
Yeah.
But and then this adventure is just good. The money, the action sequences, and I like to say he really reminds me of, well, that it's a lazy analogy, but like kind of the quality of an Alex Raymond.
Sure, I get that completely.
You know what I mean? That this is the type of draftsmanship because, and I'm reading Ted every 2 weeks, and I had read the first volume, and I was about halfway through the second one. Because the second volume of the Archives is a wholly different monster.
Sure.
When Gershwin takes over, the art, it's beautiful. It's but it's a totally different kind of beauty, and the stories take on a fairy tale kind of aspect, which I find intriguing. But it is, I think, of all the Golden Age comics I've read, that the Starman ones by Fox and Burnley, and now I've done a couple that are Alfred Bester and Burnley, are just, I think they're superior to a lot of the stuff in here. That they kind of stand out.
I would agree with you. Yeah, and Burnley's art, not realism, is realism the word? Because what's interesting is what you're saying about Billy being drawn in a sort of looser, sort of more cartoony style. If you look at the way the bad guys are drawn, they have a slight caricature look to them as well.
Yes, they do. Yeah, they do. That's kind of like the Bluto effect, where Popeye looks one way and Bluto looks another.
Yeah, and that's obviously deliberate on Burnley's part, so that Ted and Doris are the two beautiful, handsome, gorgeous leads, and it's very interesting. Not many other artists would work like that. I think, where they would sort of stylize each character to make them look, so recognisably different. I love page 4 of Ted's story, panel 3, just when Ted running in looking very Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon, and the bad guys just look like, they look like they could have walked out of a Kirby Newsboy Legion story, quite frankly. They're so obviously bad guys. But this is beautiful to look at. It's just, I could just repeat myself again and again and again. It's just gorgeous. It's just rendered. It's so well. Again, what you said earlier on about even the bad guys, though their faces are drawn in a heightened style, but they're realistically still drawn proportionally for the rest of the bodies. They do look like regular people.
Yeah, and I like when he's fighting. I don't know, is the Cosmic Rod allows him to punch one dude and send 3 more and 2 others flying through the air. But like on the next page after he runs in is when he hits. There's a sock, and the action in this is a little more cartoony, and I mean in like comic strip, than it is in his solo book.
Yeah,
Because they're going, okay, this. I think they know their audience. These stories are written for 6 to 10-year-olds.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they kind of soften it.
Yeah, and the one thing that struck me out when I was reading this afternoon and sort of prep, I love the fact that the Cosmic Rod lets Ted basically melt a hole in the wall so he can get into the bad guy's hideout. That's just. Did you notice one thing? While I remember, there's one caption that reads Secret of the Haunted House, which is one letter away from the name of a 70s horror anthology, I believe, isn't that right? Was it not Secrets of the Haunted House, or was it Haunted Mansion or something?
Yeah.
It was a 70s book.
I think it's Haunted House, because Haunted Mountain is the Disney ride. Disney ride.
Yeah. Even some of Ted's dialogue, when he calls the guy, you cheap rats.
Yeah.
That's a little more lurid than normal. I'm just thinking, it just strikes me, Ted looks so conspicuously heroic.
He does. It's like this is because they meant him to be like, they want him to be as popular as Superman. And that's what they were going for, the big heroic guy. And I think, Burnley drew Superman, and I think his is some of the Golden Age Superman I think is the best. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he is. Then I'm reading the comic, while reading the other ones, Burnley's got some standard poses.
Sure.
And he's probably done it because this is what he looks flying from left to right, from right to left, landing, But he always just looks, is it me? Because nowadays, how Superman over time got taller and broader, and before he was very much, at the beginning, you know what I mean, more like a wrestler.
Sure. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
They were going for one. People were not that much shorter, but you know what I mean.
They streamlined them a bit, didn't they, over time? But he did. Everyone talks about the Wayne Boring style barrel chest.
I love Wayne Boring. God, yeah. People dog him. I'm like, don't, man, don't.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed. That Wayne Boring profiler. He looks like Mr. Potato Head.
Sure.
But I like the action, and so he melts the warway, and then he goes, "Here's a message via radio." As he knocks a dude so hard it lifts the radio. And on 40s radio, it'd take you and me both to lift the damn thing.
Yeah, I know. And I'm thinking what you said. It's like there's definitely an implication that that Ted has some kind of super strength going on.
It comes from the rod. It allows him to hit harder, lift more, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it has to be. I like the way that the cape, Ted's cape as well, it seems to have real weight to it. It's always doing something. It seems to react to his movements. There's a bit more care taken with that there as well. It's really nice.
Yeah, if you look at right after he runs in and he starts the fight initially, there's a panel about 3/4 of the way down, and it's one panel across it, and he's swinging a punch, and the cape is flown all the way off, so you can see his back.
Yeah.
Because he's showing you the force at which he's spinning.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he does that a couple times.
Yeah, towards the end of page 5 as well. It's when it swings out behind him as he turns. It's you just get the sense that it's considered, that Burnley was not phoning this in, that he was trying to make this look as good as he possibly could.
Oh yeah, and I love he has his standard flight poses and landings where it's like one knee up, one foot down.
Yeah.
Which is but also like back to Billy is the final panel is the kid's been given all the money to keep the money, and he's looking at the audience, going, "Oh boy, cake and ice cream."
Yes, and again, just Doris and Ted just looking just so beautiful. There's another full moon at the top when he flies off with who is it he's taken? Yeah. And he takes him off one to one to that nice policeman. Is that policeman one of the O'Dare family? Who can say?
Who knows? I don't know, because Alan, we have Chief Allen.
Yeah,
that's Doris's uncle.
Yeah.
Does he make? I've been very careful not to read ahead in Starman.
There is a story in the first JSA All Stars miniseries that James and Tony do after Starman is finished, which uses Chief Allen.
Oh. Okay, I know which one you're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say around about 2003, I think that was out.
Yeah, I like that one. I got to. So, but this story, the whole story kind of pays off. We were talking, about making fun of Johnny Thunder, but I do like that lightning bolt where they're all riding him.
Yeah.
But it's, it's a neat little comic. I think it ties up all right. Oh, Elba comes back, kinda.
No, it works very well because I like the idea of them all having a common problem, all experiencing the same sort of difficulty, and obviously Chuck's got the antidotes, so they can all go and sort it out. And then they all come back together again, and the shot of Thunderbolt finding them all, it's great. It's this is still, it's a while yet before they become a proper team book. It's still individual chapters, and it's individual chapters for a good long time. But it's light years away from All Star Comics issue 3 when they all just sit around having dinner and talking about their latest adventures. They are starting to integrate, but now they're really integrating it all so that the team is sharing the adventure or having a link between.
Yeah, they do become more intertwined, and then eventually, when Broom takes over, it becomes more like a more modern superhero team where they split up into pairs. There's only one artist, and if you're lucky enough, it's Alex Toth. But we need to mention one other thing in this comic too, that it has the first appearance of Wonder Woman.
It does, which is why I think it qualified for a Millennium edition.
Yeah, it wasn't the Starman and Mid-Nite joining the Justice Society.
Sadly not. Sadly not.
I really love Moulton's. Who is the penciler for Moulton?
Do you know what? I don't know.
I know it's someone, not him, because he was that weird shrink dude. Folks, just Google the creator of Wonder Woman, and you're gonna go, that shit's got to be made up. It's like, no, it ain't.
Yeah, he had some. Actually, does it tell us? So, excuse me.
Hold on. Oh, the penciler is Harry G. Peter.
Yeah, I've just found that as well. Jinx.
But it's unique to Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman had her own style of storytelling.
We had a spell on the Earth 2 podcast when we did quite a few Wonder Woman stories quite close together. Because it was around about the period when they revived the Golden Age Wonder Woman, as it were, and it kind of limped along for a few issues and then kind of went back to normal. And there was a whole big thing about in the narrative where she went to Robert Kanigher's office and they talked about how all our supporting cast were getting put in the bin and they were going to try and bring back the true essence. And this, looking at this, it reminds me of the sort of stuff they were trying to do.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to think that she just she turned up as a background feature in All Star Comics. I mean, this obviously predates Sensation Comics.
Well, yeah, Mike has that. Wait, let me look at Mike's, because Mike's has a note to that. So come on. She next appears in Sensation Comics. What was the note? First appearance. Her next appearance is. God damn, this thing's been reprinted like 20 times. Yeah. She next story continues in Sensation Comics #1, which is about 10 days later.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, November 7th, 1941, 1 month before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy.
So this was just to get someone reading this, make sure we got a new comic coming out next week.
Yeah. That's nowadays it would be all, viral email, viral Twitter campaigns or posts on TikTok or something. That's fascinating that she's introduced. I guess the sales figures for All Star Comics are big enough that they knew this would be a good way of launching it.
Well, I mean, it's
given a week and a half to generate a bit of interest. That's
well, I mean, I think that's really cool. And they're using the splash page of the next issue as the ad in the previous issue for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's really interesting, and because this is still a mix of DC and All American, right? And
Sure.
eventually it's just DC characters, and all the All American characters are gone.
Yeah, and there is that sort of, which is covered really well in one of Roy Thomas's All-Star Companions. There's the brief sort of period when there's a kind of falling out, so some guys aren't used, which is why Mr. Terrific and Wildcat pop up for one issue, and why the Spectre vanishes, and all that sort of stuff.
And they have to bring back Green Lantern and Flash to fill in the holes.
Yeah. Listeners, if you've never read the All-Star Companions from Tomorrow's Publishing, you really should.
Oh, they're great. They're great. I know I've told the story on the podcast, but I don't know if I told you. You'll like this. So I have a comp. I got the first volume of All-Star Companion when it came out. I had it for years because it's old. It's been around for a while. But I had it. I was reading it, and I took it to the theater where I was building the set, and so I could read it on my lunch break. And I threw my bag down, and the sparkling water in my bag exploded.
No.
Soaked my copy.
Oh no.
So I decided, well, I'll buy another one. It dried out. It was passable, and I said, I just don't feel this is just painful. I'll just buy another one. So I got one on eBay for about half price.
Cool.
And I just put it on the shelf. I wasn't going to read it again. I'd read it. I wasn't going to read it. Put it on the shelf. And then I was going to start to do an episode, one of my early episodes of Let's Team Up with Jennifer DeRoss, and we're going to talk Justice Society and Gardner Fox. So I pulled it out. And there inside is an inscription by its author, Roy Thomas, to the original fucking owner.
Bloody hell. Bloody hell. And they sold it.
Yeah, I paid about $20, which is cheap for a printing of it, but it's got Roy's, and he didn't say it had Roy's autograph in it.
Blimey.
I don't think he cared.
No, that's terrible. I remember years ago buying a copy. It says Tangent City, but you'll like it. A few years ago, I decided to try and collect every single cover for every single Doctor Who novelisation.
How do you move in your house?
Oh, with difficulty, mate. Honestly, with difficulty. Ask Peter. He's the only person that ever comes round. But years ago, I was in a second-hand bookshop in Paisley, my hometown, when I was a kid, and I bought a copy of The Three Doctors in paperback for £3. The original cover, the Chris Achilleos one, when he's got the Galactus hands firing into Johnsy and Pat and Bill.
I love that image.
And it had Tom Baker's autograph inside.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because I heard you mention it, or you mentioned it. Was it on the podcast? You mentioned the Pinnacle versions or something?
Yes. No, I had tweeted. I tweeted because there are some new Doctor Who novelizations imminent.
Oh yeah.
I've ordered them. I've ordered them from whowon.co.uk. So there you go, listeners. There's a free plug for a very good Doctor Who shop. But the shelves that I have the Doctor Who novelizations on at home, they're over 4 shelves and they're rammed. So I'm going, how am I going to fit these 5 new books into these shelves that are rammed? And I thought, do I take out the Pinnacle editions and bump it? Because I integrated them a long time ago, the American reprints.
Yeah, that's some of my earliest Doctor Who was reading those. My brother gave them to me at a mall. Really? Yeah, I'd seen like 1 or 2, and then the show was on. Then I finally saw the show, so I'd read them. Mm-hmm. And anything that had Harlan Ellison's name on it, my brother bought.
Right. Okay.
See, my brother's is opinionated. He has his opinions about Stan and Jack, and it's like sometimes I just have to say, I don't give a fuck. Okay, Stan was a good promoter. Jack was doing the heavy lifting, but you still got to give Stan some credit. You cannot.
Absolutely.
Well, there are a lot, some of them. There are some of those fans who want to take it all away. It's like, you know what? We don't have comic books if we don't have Stan.
This is very true.
So, but back to the Starman part of it in the All-Star. Yeah. These are interesting, man. I think they're worth reading. I mean, I kind of, because I've read volumes of these, and I've thought I'm going to read them all in order. do a massive reread, and they can be tough.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's the sheer volume of it, the sheer number of stuff to get through is I think what kind of mocks me. 'Cause I got quite far into them. I remember making notes as I was at the time as I was doing it, just sort of contrasting the way characters were written and how we were so used to them. Because I remember being really struck at how different the Sandman was from the version of him I got used to from Sandman Mystery Theatre.
Oh yeah.
And it was interesting reading them and sort of comparing what Dr. Fate was like to the way we're so used to him now, and that sort of thing. They're very important sort of historical documents. I mean, I've never been a big Hawkman fan, but I remember really enjoying his stories and finding them really satisfying.
Yeah, I do. It's when I read, those are ones I really remember. Some of them just kind of disappear in my memory, and even if it's one I've read a bunch, All-Star 3, 4 and 5, the first few, and some of the later ones, or the ones that were in the 100-page Justice Leagues in the 70s, because that's where I read them for the first time.
Evil Star and all that sort of stuff.
And it's very different. It's a very different comic book at the end. It's a very different comic book at the end.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy them, and when I go back, I still reading them because I've been looking at them more because I'm doing the Starman podcast, and I've interviewed Jennifer, and I've done a couple other episodes about Justice Society. Is how unfamiliar, especially since I can read the Starman solo stuff, because that's the only Golden Age solo stuff I've got.
Right.
That I've never read a bunch. I've read the Kirby Green Arrow, which is weird, and I've done drugs weird. But I love it. It's like when you guys did the alien one. It wasn't Jack, but it felt like a Jack story.
Was that
Z? What?
Was that Zenaro?
Z in it? Yeah.
Yeah, I did that a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
that was a great story.
It was
another one that gives lie to the idea that Flash 123 is the start of the multiverse, because there's Ollie and Roy travelling to another dimension and meeting an alternate version of Green Arrow.
Yeah.
Years before Flash of Two Worlds. Yeah.
But
we've actually just done a couple more kind of early Golden Age-ish Green Arrow stories for a couple of upcoming episodes. Dealing with the Seven Soldiers of Victory. So they'll be out probably by the time this is released. They'll have been out for a week or two, I think.
Yeah, I think when I do Stargirl, I always do another comic with it, and when I was doing it, and then I got backed up, so I did two. But I did the first issue I did was with Seven Soldiers of Victory, and see, here's the thing. Do you have the Seven Soldiers archives? Of course you do.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
They are from the first issue. The quality of art is well above the quality of art in this.
Yeah, agreed.
Even with the highly stylized artist that does Star Spangled Kid and Stripesy, it's a choice.
Yeah. They don't. So I've been looking at the Star Spangled archives a little bit, obviously in preparation for us doing the 1972 JLA JSA team up on Earth 2, and I noticed that immediately. Just the artwork is just consistently a lot better through them all. Saying that, I don't want to kind of diminish the enjoyment factor of reading an issue of All Star Comics.
Oh no, yeah.
Because I love these guys, and it's I love the JSA, and it's brilliant just being able to. We're so lucky nowadays that we've got the archives on our shelves, because one thing that Pete and I have talked a lot about when we've done comics published in the early 70s is just how series like Wanted or the 52-page issues were really good, because they gave readers at the time the chance to read Golden Age stories in the days before comprehensive archive, repackaging programs.
Yeah. Well, one I like that DC is they've done, because I remember reading, and I bought one, the Secret Origins with Kid Eternity. I saw it in they had just gotten it in at the comic shop, Velocity Comics Richmond. Go see them, they're great guys, Ron and Pat. But they had it sitting there, and I said, "Is this priced yet?" And he went, "Yeah, why?" I said, "That's one of those memories, of comic. I know when I read this, it stuck with me. I read it over and over again. Is that the Wanted and the Secret Origin, and DC has put them out in hardcovers, these nice thin hardcovers, and they're on the app. But I mean, I would like them because they really the decision was surgical in what stories they put in there.
Yes.
Yeah, they were the best. Here is the best of this comic.
Yeah. Yeah, our Secret Origins episode is coming up fairly soon, and we've been debating
which ones to do.
It informed us when we chose the stories for the Wanted episode. We each had a sort of short list of 2 or 3, and we debated which characters to use because we also knew that the Secret Origins book was coming up, and we didn't want to just do anyone we didn't want to do any stories with anyone who we might also do the Secret Origin of. So I think at this point we've decided actually to do Kid Eternity and Aquaman.
Oh, really?
So that'll be a nice way. We'll do that one because we'll do it whenever it ties in with the publication of Secret Origins issue 1, which I think is towards the end of 1972. So it'll be the next month or 2 that we'll record that one, I think.
But it's a great series.
Yeah, it's great. It is great because it's got the early vigilante stories. It's got the first appearance of the Gentleman Ghost. It's got stories for Wildcat, Wonder Woman, Blackhawk, Silver Age stuff as well, like the Legion and Barry Allen and the Atom. And not is Barry in it? Yeah, he is. Hal Jordan, all that sort of stuff. It's a great Secret Origins. It's a brilliant sort of title if you're a newbie because it gets you up to speed.
Yeah, and those were great. My brother bought those. So one, I think maybe just to make sure I could read them.
Right.
And so because he knew that. I mean, my brother is he's almost 70.
Right.
And so I would, I want to pick his brain. Maybe I should get him to come visit and say, I want you on the podcast. I want you to explain how you found out about shit.
That would be good.
Because I have no fucking idea how he did. He just took me to a comic book shop in 1978, and I was at a comic book store. And I went, wow, they sell comics. Wow, I can get old comics?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing, I mean, and it started me within, like, a couple years, I completed my first run. Marvel 2-in-1. It only had 50 issues at the point or whatever it was, but I had a complete run.
That would be good. It's always interesting hearing sort of people's sort of formative experiences of how they got into the hobby and all that sort of stuff. And if he's up for it, if he's agreeable to it, that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to know because you got to think and I want to hear the story about the Foot Locker. This legendary Foot Locker that was full of early Marvel that got wet, and my dad didn't let him move it to California.
Right. Gosh.
In 71.
Did you? Because you told me that he gave you, was it JLE 100 or one of those issues?
Yeah, he probably bought it in a 7-Eleven while going across country.
Yeah.
Or we had him highs or a gas station. Got it off the spinner rack.
Yeah.
While we were driving across country, my parents took 4 children from San Diego to San Francisco to New York City to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is like in the middle of fucking Pennsylvania. And it was when I see National Lampoon Vacation, I have fucking flashbacks. And some of the stories, and I don't know if they're true or not, but that road trip is one of my great comic book first things, and I think it's also where I got I'm gonna have to check the dates, but Superboy 198 or something,
right,
where Timberwolf comes back, and it's Cochran. So
yeah,
but but he knew all this stuff, man, and then he started buying Comics Journal and all the magazines and read them every month, and just it was in his brain. It's still in his brain. This is a guy who's probably got 3 different sets of the complete Milton Caniff.
Right. You have to get him on. That'd be a great episode.
Yeah, he's just a bit of a prat.
Yeah.
No, he's not. He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Just sort of.
I should do it. I've been trying to get him to come down and visit. And my wife is like,
I got my sister I got my sister involved. Ross has very kindly helped us out on our upcoming, might be out, but I'm not sure. our Seven Soldiers of Victory, JLA 100 to 102. Ross has helped us out in that. And I got my sister to help out as well. She played Zatanna for us.
Awesome.
She's basically her Zatanna voice is her Nicola Bryant Perry voice.
Oh, that really like the voice where like we're Americans and like it's actually pretty close to Baltimore accent. She did her homework. She did her homework. That's a Baltimore accent.
It is really good. So that Alison's my wee sister, excuse me, her Zatanna voice is her Nicola Bryant impression.
Very cool.
So that's quite good. Can't remember if she has any scenes with Starman though. That would be interesting. She probably has, maybe at some point. I don't know.
No. Oh, it's fun.
We're on the cusp of, finally. I mean, it was months ago we recorded you as Starman. It was months ago we recorded Kenny as Doctor Mid-Nite. It was months ago that I think it was in February. I got my friend Ari on to record Adam Strange's lines, and we're finally going to record the skeleton for it next week.
Oh, cool!
Finally getting it done, but a couple of things have got in the way of us recording recently. But we got the other Seven Soldiers one recorded on Wednesday. So next week the plan is that with lots of tea, lots of cups of tea, that we're going to boom, and then Pete will go off and start assembling it all together. I can't wait. I'm so excited to hear it.
I'm very excited for it. I'm very excited because it is, folks, and you'll hear it. It's probably one of the most important comics in my development as a comic nerd. So that's cool. Well, hey, David, thank you. This was fun. So last week, you have heard something we recorded in April. This will be up in July. Yeah. And it's mid-June right now. So let me kind of go what's next week, folks, so I can tell you. Hold on. Whoop, there we go. So this week is this. Next week is Invasion issue 2 and Starman 6. So
excellent. Looking forward to that.
Oh, good God. Then good God. I got All-Star 9 is coming fast behind it.
Cool.
So a lot of fun stuff coming up, folks. Hey, David, tell them what you've got going. Anything other than the Amazing Earth 2 podcast?
I'm an occasional contributor to a Doctor Who podcast my friend Kenny Smith operates called The Power of Three. I'm an even more occasional contributor to another Doctor Who podcast he does called The Pieces of Eighth, which is devoted to the Eighth Doctor. So you should check those out. Kenny puts a lot of time into those. And Kenny's address book is endless. He knows everyone. And he gets some really good interview material. But as far as the Earth 2 podcast, we've reached 1972 at the moment. That's where we are.
Very cool. Very cool.
Shazam is imminent. What else is imminent? Secret Origins is imminent. The Freedom Fighters are going to turn up before too long. We're going to be doing our first issue of Weird War Tales, I think, fairly soon.
Oh, you got Max coming? Max helping out on that one?
We might get them involved. They are involved also with Max and Rich are both involved in JLA 100 to 102. I'm not going to tell you who they're playing though. I don't want to spoil it.
Oh no! Don't! I can't wait. Yeah, because you're my Thursday morning to work listen, and
they're the Wednesday morning walk to work listen, aren't they?
Oh, okay, that's fair. And then on Friday is Untitled Star Trek, and I guested on Joe Ford, who's one of the hosts. Which it's my favorite Star Trek podcast. It's just two guys randomly picking a Star Trek episode, and then they, it's a commentary podcast. And my wife is like, "Don't you have to watch it?" And I said, "It's freaking Star Trek, man." Things you told me yesterday I don't remember, but I know Spock's brain. No brain. What is brain?
That's a great episode. I love Spock's brain.
You got to listen. You should check them out. Find the Spock's brain. Nathan Bottomley, who's from Australia, Joe's from England. Nathan says Jesus Christ more times watching Spock's brain. If it's the episode, he just goes, every time something off happens, he goes, Jesus Christ.
What? Remind me, what's the podcast called again?
The Untitled Star Trek podcast. Untitled.
Yeah, we were talking there about the Weird Warriors podcast, listeners, without actually giving you the name.
Oh, yes, please.
Now, I want to give it, I'm mentioning this to anyone and everyone. Check out the Brandon Peters show as well. Brandon is doing a brilliant thing at the moment called The Summer of 93 at 30, where he reviews weekend by weekend movies that were out 30 years ago, and it's joyous. He does it with Aaron and with Scott Mendelson from The Wrap, and it's brilliant. Brandon is my favourite podcaster. I say that unashamedly. He's brilliant. He's so positive about everything, and you should check him out. He's a good guy.
All right, I'm going to need to do that. I'm behind on my Doctor Who listening, and I've got my podcast down to like the 4 or 5 major ones that I'm listening to.
Yeah. My Big Finish, I've sort of agreed with Kenny that I'll listen to the Big Finish 60th anniversary thing and talk about that on one of his Doctor Who podcasts. So I need to finish this new version of the Ark in Space that's been released.
How was that? I haven't bought much recently just because of money.
I'm only just on episode 2. It's okay. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
I do like her as her mom. I think
very good.
She's one of the Third Doctor sets with Tim Treloar playing Pertwee.
Yeah.
And I heard her voice and I went, and Sarah Jane, she's
very.
Oh no, my wife guessed it on Gallifrey's Most Wanted, and I made her watch School Reunion, and I said, "Do you know why this one's important?" She goes, "Yes, it's her." And I went, "Yeah."
Right.
And I was like, and Vic, my podcasting partner, there are only 2 times she ever called to check on me when a celebrity died. One was Levon Helm of the band.
Sure.
And the other was Elizabeth Sladen. She called. Yeah. She's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Nah, fuck, not really. I mourned yet." So.
Yeah.
But I do. Her daughter is amazing. What is her? Sadie.
Yeah, Sadie Miller. Yeah.
Sadie Miller. She's a.
I wouldn't say too much about it in case you do hear it, but I would recommend it. Genesis of Terror, completists only, if I'm being tactful. But
that one I'm not. It's like.
Yeah.
There are enough versions of that story. I don't need another one.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right.
Anyway.
All right, folks. Well, that's it. We tangented at the end, as me and David will do while we talk. This is mild, folks. This is nowhere near as long as some of them. Christ, I'm recording at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Blimey.
Well, Joe Ford is guesting on to cover The Woman Who Fell to Earth because we've gotten through a rotation, and I said right before the new Doctor starts, I put Jodie into the rotation to kind of go, all right, these things are 5 or 6 years old. They can get reassessed. What do I think now, 5 years later? Which is, I'm looking forward to some new Who that I'm interested in. I'm just, as I said, I haven't watched a lot of modern Who in the last 3 or 4 years, except when it's new and on.
Sure.
Except if I'm doing an episode, because the DVD, the Blu-ray sets that they're doing of Classic are just.
Yes.
I'm still haven't finished season 2. This weekend I'm watching The Chase.
Right. Oh, brilliant.
David Whittaker Dalek stories are better than all Dalek stories, and I will never argue. I will never say that. I will die on that hill.
Chase is great because episode 1 has the Beatles, and what says the 60s in Britain more than.
I don't know if they're in it now on the Blu-ray.
Oh, we got them in the UK. Were they cut out?
Okay, I haven't watched it yet because they were cut out on the DVDs.
Well, let me know, and if they've been cut out, I'll film it off my tail.
No. I have I may have an illicit.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I can. We'll think of something. Right.
All right, folks. As always, be safe, be smart. Please be kind to one another. There are enough dicks in this world, And read some comics. Read some Golden Age comics.
Yeah.